Yes, guys, how is it going? This video is going to be noisy, accompanied by the sounds of the airplane. I'm going to talk to you about my money mindset stories, where I started in terms of business in general, but also my mindset and identity around money, where I saw that the first signs of my mindset around money actually holding me back, what I did about it, how I figured out that something was holding me back in my actual mindset around money, what I did about it, and where I am now. As you can see, I'm filming this in business class right now. People are sleeping around me, so it's a little bit awkward. I'm flying from Bali to Dubai and then Dubai to the UK. This is my first business class flight. I almost didn't book it. I needed my friends to pressure me because they know my business, they know where I am and stuff, and they thought it was mental that I wasn't getting it. I needed them to pressure me, call me a brokey, say that I've got a brokey mindset for me to even actually pull the trigger and get this first flight, this first business class flight. Even just getting this shows more of a progression in my mindset than my actual finances, and I'm going to explain all of that as we get into it. For a long time, my mindset and my identity around money, my beliefs around money, held me back tremendously. The me from 5 years ago would have thought that me getting this flight was mental, right? And I definitely can't say I've completed it. Like I said, to even get this flight, I needed to be pressured by my friends and peer pressured into it, right? I can't say I've completed it, but I've done some work on it. I've definitely been able to improve it. I'm just coming home from a trip in Bali where I spent 16 days in Bali. 4 of those days were at a business mastermind. One was 3K for the entire day. One, I pay that mental 3K a month, but this is included in that. And now I'm on a 2K flight coming home. I'm not saying any of this to show off, flex. Like I said, this is my first business class flight. I'm not pretending anything different than that. I'm just saying this because, like I said, 5 years ago, none of this would have been real. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't have allowed myself to experience its abundance. And like I said, not completed the game of money mindset. I've not completed anything, but I'm way further along than I was 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and I want to share with you what I learned. So I've got a couple of tips I'm going to share with you at the end. But before I do that, I want to share with you kind of like my origin story because I think my story is probably going to be very, very relevant here from where I started and how I actually found out that I had these things, these beliefs, this identity that was actually holding me back from growing my business and making more money. How I found out about it, what I did about it. Even more importantly, hopefully for you, it will be useful. I'll even open up about like going through hypnotherapy and stuff, what in my childhood actually shaped the initial money stories and money beliefs that I actually had. I've been friends with people in similar industries as me or the same industries as me, right, that have come from money. And it's really interesting to observe that they often make money quicker. It's not due to them being helped out by their parents or even being able to fund things better than the next person. It seems to just be due to the fact that they are more comfortable with making money. They're more comfortable with receiving money. They're more comfortable with a certain level of wealth than other people, than myself initially. They also just expect it. If they've grown up around money, a lot of the time they just expect I'm meant to make this much money. This is what I should be doing, and it's just kind of normal to them. So it's very, really, really interesting for me to actually have observed that, right? That definitely wasn't kind of where I came from. My childhood was great. It was really good. Nothing bad happened in it. We definitely didn't have a huge amount of money. My mum and dad, although they both have always been in my life, they broke up when I was 3. So I grew up with my mum and my sister in a council house. I never thought that any of that was a problem. I got on with things. I was always comfortable, at least in, my perception of it. Like I never felt uncomfortable. My mom and dad breaking up, I genuinely didn't think it ever affected me. I just thought I didn't know any different. So all of it seemed completely fine to me. I was just getting on with things. Even at a really, really young age, I was aware of money. So I remember when I was in year 6, so if you don't know, that's like around 9 or 10 years old, all of my class was doing a cycling proficiency test. If you're from UK, maybe you remember what that is. If you're not, it's kind of when, I don't know why, someone comes to your school and teaches you how to ride a bike, like a push bike, on the road. That was coming up. And at this time I was 9 or 10, it was £30. And at 9 or 10, I was so aware of money and I didn't want to be a burden. This is how I kind of saw it. I didn't want to be a burden to my mum or to my dad. I never told anyone about it, right? So then when that cycling proficiency day came around, I vividly remember everyone else riding their bikes on the road and me having to sit out because I never paid for it. 100% we would have had £30, but I didn't want to be a burden. So I never even let anyone know it existed. And that continued all the way through school. Anytime there was a school trip, I'd see the price of it. It might be like £100 or something like that. And I'd never tell it. I'd never tell my parents because I had this belief that we didn't have much money. And we'll get into why in a second, but I had this belief that we didn't have much money. Like I was so aware, even at such a young age, of the burden that money can have, which is really interesting looking back. During it, I just thought it was completely normal, right? But looking back, it's quite interesting to think. Fast forward to when I became about 23. I'd been a online fitness coach for quite some time now. I built it to 6 figures. I was making 6 figures a year, which was like a crazy amount to me at the time. 6 figures, all by myself, with this online business. And I still living at home with my mum because I kept telling myself I was going to travel. So I just wanted to not spend money, funnily enough. So I built this business from 0 to 6 figures in my mum's house, in my sister's room, because my sister had gone to university. So I was in her room. I had this little makeshift standing desk. And I just remember doing sales calls there and stuff like that. I even remember when I hit my first 10K month, my mentor at the time was big on us setting ourselves rewards. So we wouldn't just set the next goalpost, but we'd actually enjoy it. He always used to write on an iPad. I was just like, okay, I'll get an iPad then if I hit a 10K month. I remember this is when I kind of started to figure out things might have been a bit weird in my brain around money. I remember sitting there vividly. I was in my sister's room again. I'd just finished work. I'd put this off all day, sitting there about to order the iPad, being so nervous and so guilty as well. I felt so much guilt. I'd made 10K that month, probably all profit. From that point, I flew to Dubai for the first time ever. I didn't really think I'd like Dubai from the outside looking in. But I flew to Dubai for a business event. It was part of a mentorship that I was already in, and they were running an intimate event in Dubai. Funnily enough, I packed for 1 week. Because we went for 1 week. When we got there, lockdown was announced, the second lockdown in the UK. So I kind of had this decision to make. Okay, do I want to go home and get locked down again, not have a gym, not be able to go out, be back at my mum's? Or do I want to stay in Dubai and not be locked down and be in Dubai and have a good time? That was a huge internal battle for me because I was just looking at having to spend money. Up until this point, I had loads of money in the bank because I just hoarded all of it. I just hoarded it all. And now it was time that I actually was thinking, oh my God, am I actually finally going to spend this money? And I was like, there was this huge internal battle. I ended up living in Dubai for 2 years from that point, and I actually never left for an entire year. So imagine that. I said goodbye to my mum for a week. I packed for a week and never left for a year, which is a bit crazy. It was here that I started to really notice the money mindset stuff. I was now kind of forced to spend a little bit more money. I was around people that were making lots of money, and I was around wealth. I was in really nice places, like really nice hotel lobbies or restaurants and stuff like that, and or around people that were making lots of money, and I could feel out of place. Even though at this point I was making like £10,000 to £13,000 every single month, I was looking for apartments in budget places, for Dubai at least. I remember going and looking around an apartment that had like 7 different people living in it, and they were all working it. They just had without sounding rude, low paying jobs, if you know what I mean. I was basically making 10 to 13K a month, living and making decisions like I was at 3K a month. But the biggest thing when I was in Dubai was being around these people that were making great money. Some were making the same amount of money as me. Some were making way more. Just noticing how different they operated around money, because up until this point I'd never had a mirror held up to me, right? I'd never really had too much to kind of compare to, but now I did. I realized that I was working so hard, but I wasn't allowing myself to experience any of it. I wasn't allowing anything to change in my life. Before I'd left from Dubai, I built my business from 0 to 10 to 12 to 13K months. I think before I left for Dubai, it was probably 10 or 11K months. But nothing changed apart from the number on my bank account. I didn't wear different clothes. I didn't allow myself any more of the things that I enjoyed or I liked. I didn't experience any more abundant. And one of the biggest things is my identity didn't shift, because I'd never let it shift my environment or my reality or any of my actual human experience apart from numbers on a screen. So my identity never ever shifted. And I am a really big believer that your income can only grow so far past your identity. I really, really believe that now. Being in this world, being around much more wealth, being around people making money, all of this stuff, not only did it become really, really clear to me that I had this strange kind of guilt around spending money and even letting abundance in, I also felt a huge amount of guilt around being paid money. And I've really begun to notice it. And I noticed it all the way looking back. I think I spoke to people and realized, oh, that's not normal. Oh, they don't feel that way. They feel happy to get to get paid. And I was like, oh, I know for a fact my program was good. I have always cared a tremendous amount about any of my clients. I was genuinely changing people's lives. I knew all of that, but I still had this feeling of guilt. And I thought to myself, I think these two things are probably linked. If I feel guilty spending money and I feel guilty taking money, probably something going on here around my money mindset. And if I'm trying to make a lot of money, but I have these negative feelings when receiving money, it probably isn't ideal for my business. So I sought help. I began to realize people that made more money than me didn't feel this way about money. Started to put the clues together that this is probably going to hold me back if I don't sort it out. I had gone to Dubai. One of my best friends, who is a hypnotherapist, I didn't want to work with him because he was a very close friend of mine. So, be a bit weird telling him all of my secrets and stuff like this. So he put me on to the person who he had to answer to, if you know what I mean, if he had any problems with his clients or anything else. So I signed up. So I spoke to this guy. I had an amazing first kind of like sales call basically, and signed up with Russell Davies, who was a hypnotherapist, is a hypnotherapist. And I've talked about him before in his videos. He genuinely changed so much. And we ended up working on this stuff really, really deeply for 9 months. I think 6 months really, really intense. 3 more months, as a little bit of like maintenance and stuff like that. So before we get into it, a little bit around like how hypnotherapy works, by the way. So Russell, not only is he a hypnotherapist, but he's a coach. The hypnotherapy, they don't like do any of the like, doing that in front of your face and like you fall asleep. But in my experience of it, at least, they put you into a hypnotic state, very meditative state, really, and apparently very suggestible state. And here, you're often trying to go back into your subconscious of where these feelings or, whatever you're experiencing stems from. Because what happens is, in your childhood years, your formative years, something happened. And obviously as a child, you're not very good at understanding the world. You haven't really got so many things to compare with, and like shit that's not even that bad can actually end up being very traumatic, and you can create like certain responses to, because it feels bad to you because you haven't experienced too much. Shit that's really bad will be really, really bad. It kind of plants a seed, a belief in your mind. That belief might not be that huge right now, but beliefs create thoughts, and thoughts create actions, right? And your action creates your reality. With that belief now planted, creating thoughts, creating actions that create a reality, as you start to create and find more evidence for that belief being true. And over your years, it just solidifies and solidifies and solidifies until eventually you're wearing these beliefs like glasses. What I mean by that is you're wearing these beliefs and they tint your world, right? These beliefs completely shape how you're seeing the world and what you're seeing versus the next person. If you woke up and had some glasses on and they were helping you see clearly, because they're so close to your eyes, you wouldn't even know that they're on. And that's exactly what these beliefs do. Before being aware of them, they're like glasses. They color your world. They completely change how you take everything in, and they completely change how you then think and act and the reality that you create. So often we don't even know that we're wearing them. In hypnotherapy, it's all about going back and trying to find that first moment that you started to feel something, even though you might be able to see it as an adult completely differently and you can understand it completely differently. How did the child version of you actually take that, and what meaning did he put or she put on it? And then you can start to raise awareness for yourself around this, because in coaching or in any transformational change, awareness is curative. When we want to change something, just simply being aware, one, that it's even there, and two, where it actually came from, is the first essential step to changing it. Sometimes it's the only step needed, because when you can start to see that, oh, I have this belief around this is where it comes from. This isn't necessarily reality, or this isn't necessarily truth. It's just my truth right now. You begin to get choice. You begin to get choice of, do I want to continue to live in this truth or this belief or not? So that's kind of how hypnotherapy works. So let's get into what we kind of did with me. Session number 1 of the hypnotherapy. Well, funnily enough, this was before I'd even paid him. Russell, at this point at least, wasn't really doing sales calls. It was kind of like the first call was basically a coaching session. I jumped on, I knew about sales. I was like, okay, let's have a sales call with this guy. I was completely wrong. It wasn't a sales call. We was about to literally go deep into my trauma, figure out what's wrong with me before I'd even paid him. So anyway, we started. He starts asking me about like, what's the feeling of guilt, all of this kind of stuff. What shape is it? What color is it? Anyway, we do this hypnosis thing. I'm transported back to this singular memory, this vivid memory of mine, which I almost forgot that I had in my mind. This vivid memory of the day that my mum and dad broke up. I was 3 years old, by the way. Before this, they'd been arguing a lot, apparently. I don't really remember much, but apparently the arguments were always, or like 90% of the time, stemming from money. And often, stresses around money and not having enough. I've asked them since. I didn't know that, I don't think. But what I do remember is that final argument. I vividly remember, at home, obviously, my mum and dad arguing, probably getting the worst one of these arguments they'd ever gotten. I remember the police coming around and, my dad having to leave. And by the way, the police came around. It was nothing bad like that, if you know what I mean. I don't know why they were there, but it was nothing bad like that. My dad leaving, me asking my mum, like, where's dad going? And she was like, he's just going to the shops, but he's going to be gone for quite a bit of time. Which sounds so sad when I say it now, but that's what happened. And I was taken back to this moment, and it's really weird because I never thought, genuinely never thought that impacted me or affected me. I've always been happy with, how I turn out or, my life. I've always been positive, and I've never ever been one to kind of victimize myself or to say, this held me back. So I never thought that was a problem, but it was so interesting when we went back into it and we realized that this whole money thing was stemming from that. From that point onwards, my dad was not living with us anymore. He was still completely in my life. So I was living with my mum. Her defense mechanism for having very little money, and although my dad was supporting us, we probably had, it probably felt like less money than it was before. And her defense mechanism to having less money was to always tell herself and us that we were poor, literally saying, no, we can't do that. We're poor, so we're not disappointed or something, or just set up our expectations or something like that. To hold on to money as tightly as possible. Or if I was to go and buy something, she'd often ask how much it was and say, Louis, that's way too much. You could have got it for cheaper over here. It's all starting to come together. I'm grateful for everything and the way everything turned out. I'm aware that everyone is always doing the best that they possibly can do with the information and the resources that they currently have got. I don't want this to sound like I'm saying anyone did anything wrong or anything. They didn't. It's just, it could have been way, way worse. I'm very, very grateful for how everything panned out, by the way. From that point, I was seeing money as something that we had to hold on to by any means necessary. I was seeing money as something that doesn't come around very easily, and you should do whatever you can to hold on to it if you can get it. I learned that the best way to be safe around money was to tell myself that I had none, so I wouldn't go and spend it. Tell myself that I was poor. I was taught now to see money as safety. The way that Russell put it when he was explaining this to me was, I was seeing money as oxygen, something that keeps you alive. This was the story that I was putting on money. All these stories that we place on money are just stories. The reality is, it's a resource that you can use to generate more money. It's a resource that you can use to save time and energy and other resources. But I was seeing it as this scarce resource that you had to hold on to tightly, this oxygen, this safety that if I had to hold on to. But because I was seeing it like that, right? And that's the story that I was now putting onto money. It's also the story that I put onto money in business. So that meant if I see money as something that should be held on too tightly, oxygen that I shouldn't be letting go of because it puts me in danger, then every time that I took money off someone else, even though it was a completely fair exchange, even though that money is just a resource that gets people things and they were getting a life-changing program from me, I felt guilt because of the story that I had around money. They were probably over the moon, but I felt guilt and I felt like I'd almost done them wrong because I put the story on money that it is essential for safety and it is oxygen and you should hold on tightly to it. So if I'm taking it from others, I'm harming others. So can you imagine the emotional or the inner turmoil that was created there when I wanted to go and make money and have impact on people, but at the same time, every time that I was making money, in my head and the stories that I created around money, I was harming others. That is not a great money mindset to have when you're trying to make money, right? Now, the seed was planted, right? Remember we talked about the seed? The seed was planted. Now, can you see how that caused me to not go on school trips? Or let's take the cycling proficiency test again. That's caused me to not go on the cycling proficiency test because of the stories I'd been programmed with. In that memory of me 9 or 10 years old, seeing all the other kids learning to ride a bike on a road and I couldn't, it's reinforcing that story because of this belief that's now starting to ingrained into my mind. I'd get free school dinners as well because I was a low income household or whatever. So then when all of my friends were queuing up on the left hand side of the hallway to go in and get food, I had to be a bit behind on the right hand side because I would go and get my token for £1.80 a day to go and get my food. So again, I'm starting to see more and more evidence that, okay, I am poor and I am, whatever, different, whatever. And then all of this started affecting my actions. So then I remember again, when I was 13, 14, me and my friends would be riding around on bikes. We'd go places like McDonald's. Everyone else would get McDonald's. And I wouldn't, not because I didn't have the money. I'm sure I would have had the money, but because I felt like, no way, like £1 is way too much. Like I had this feeling that I couldn't spend it, even though I had it. So again, it starts to reinforce this more and more and more. And when you're reinforcing this belief, you are poor, you don't have money, it's probably not going to be helpful when you're trying to be rich, basically. A lot of that was just from the first session. We went on to do so many other things. Awareness is curative. It shifted. That one session shifted so much for me because now I was aware that how I felt about money wasn't necessarily true and wasn't necessarily the same as everyone else. I was also aware of where this programming had come from. So I could logically see the reasoning behind how I came to this conclusion. And I could also see how I don't have to listen to this story anymore. It's not going to be easy to change it, but now I have the awareness. It's like, remember the glasses analogy? That the belief is the glasses? Like before you know that the glasses are on, you're just walking around with them thinking it's life. As soon as someone shows you the mirror and you see that you're wearing glasses, they might be sticky for some reason, like these beliefs, and they're kind of stuck on your head still. But at least you can start to not take it all so seriously anymore. So awareness straight away became curative. And then I started noticing all of the opportunities that I could have had, but I wasn't allowing myself to, because again, even though I was making all this money at that point, 10 to 13k months, I was still riding on this old programming. It wasn't allowing me to go much further. I really believe it. Your income can't go that much higher than your identity. And I also started to see how I was stopping so much abundance coming into my life. I had the resources to have and enjoy so many things that I felt like I was working towards. I wasn't allowing myself that. So from there, I started taking actions to shift and upgrade my identity. Other than continuing to work with Russell, other than staying aware of where these feelings come up and seeing what triggers these feelings and everything else, it was a case of allowing myself to go and enjoy my money. I actually remember at one point he told me to go and buy these £100 sunglasses. I was in Dubai, I didn't have sunglasses, which already most people would have had sunglasses, right? And I had my eye on some Ray-Bans and they were £100. He was like, "How much money did you make this month?" I said, like £12,000. And he was like, "What?" And he laughed at me. We had a good relationship, but he laughed at me. He goes, "What? And you don't want it? You're not going to get £100 glasses?" And he said, "Right, before our next session, you need to go and buy those glasses." So it was things like this, right? And it was all within reason. He even sent me some systems to kind of make sure that I wasn't going to go wild. I was paying myself a wage, focusing on making sure that I was putting, different money in different pots and stuff. So I knew how much I was able to spend. That's a game changer, by the way. The training begun at this point, right? To get out of this mindset. And the primary objective was to spend money on things that I liked. Pretty fun. And obviously it wasn't easy, right? Just like any other transformation, any other change, there was resistance, but I was aware of the resistance. I knew that the resistance wasn't necessarily truth. The resistance was coming from the stories and the programming that I had had. Up until then, I was staying in like not very nice apartments. I remember one in Dubai was like, there were fine apartments, but one was like on the bottom floor, zero sunlight came in at any time of the day. Oh, and it was right next to a mosque, and it would wake me up at 5 a.m. every morning or whenever the first prayer was. The first big thing that I did was I went and upgraded the apartment. This crazy apartment. I still think it's crazy now. It's a beautiful, spacious apartment with windows all the way across the wall. And I was so happy there. Like, yeah, I felt like it was like, is this really me, or should I have this? There was a feeling of that. And I'll be honest with you, there's a feeling of that now while I'm in business class, right? That was the kind of things that I was now doing, feeling the resistance and doing it anyway, to start to allow my identity to raise. And then there were small things too, like, allowing myself to get a shisha if I wanted it, or allowing myself to get some extra sweet potato fries. Like, all of these things I was genuinely not allowing myself to have before because they didn't feel 100% necessary. I started to loosen up a little bit around the money. 3 or 4 years later, I've been able to make that shift. I invest in myself heavily, like this trip, like my mentors, things like that. I invest in myself heavily. I go to expensive places specifically to upgrade my identity. I do my best to get around people making much, much more than me. Like one of the masterminds I was at, someone was making $250,000 a month. Someone was making 100K a month. Someone was making 600K a month. I get around these people to, again, upgrade my identity and expand my thinking. I really value cigars. So I go to nice cigar lounges with my friends that I get £100 cigars. And this year as well, this has been really cool for me. I was able to pay for my mum completely to go on an all-inclusive holiday as well, which was really, really cool. Since then, I make more than double. I have way more money in the bank. But most importantly, I feel way more comfortable around money. In these businesses, money goes up and down. One month might be really big, one month might not be. But I feel so much more comfortable on all of them. Not only when it's high, but also when it's low, because I realize that money is just a resource. I realize that I am valuable enough to always be able to create more money. And because of that, I feel safe. Not necessarily because the money is always coming in, because if you require that, you do not have psychological freedom. But I feel safe because I know that whatever happens, I will handle it. And that is true psychological freedom. I can take my foot off the gas with work. I can allow revenue to drop for a month, like it has done this month because I've been away for half the month in Bali. I can allow that and not feel terrible about it, because I realize that money is nothing more than a resource, and I can go out and create more of it because I am valuable and I can add value to the world. That is my story. I hope it helped. I have no idea how long that was. I hope it wasn't too long. And if it was, I hope it was at least helpful and enjoyable. I wanted to share that and actually be like genuinely transparent about where my stuff came from, because you might not have had the exact same experience, but you might have similar, and you might start to see it. And hopefully we're all wearing belief glasses in all areas of life. We're all wearing belief glasses. Hopefully now, just watching that has allowed me to kind of hold a mirror up and show you some belief glasses. I'm now going to get into throughout that journey, 6 lessons or beliefs that I hold around this money mindset stuff, or lessons that I've learned along the way. So number 1, your beliefs are like glasses, but your thoughts and your actions are the best clue that you have to what glasses you're wearing or what beliefs you're operating on. If a client leaves, let's say you've got 40 clients and one leaves, and you start getting really, really worried, that's a clue to a belief. You know, what belief are you operating on if you start getting really, really, really worried because one client left? You're operating on this belief that maybe it's you might not be good enough for this. Maybe it's this might all come crashing down. Who knows? A more relevant one is me right now sat in business class, right? I'm a work in progress too. I have not got business class before while making the same amount of money. I almost didn't get this one if I hadn't been pressured enough, right? In a good way. What belief would I have been operating on if I've got enough money to comfortably get business class and still be way within profit for this quarter, but still say no? What belief might I be operating on? Well, there's a good chance that the belief that I'm operating on is this could all be a fluke, or this might all come crashing down tomorrow. And is that a very good belief to have? Or this might all dry up? What I paid to upgrade, if that just wasn't in my bank tomorrow, I wouldn't have noticed it because I don't count that closely, and it genuinely doesn't change my life. The only reason that I wouldn't have upgraded was because there was this core belief there. So understand that when we're trying to look for these glasses, these beliefs, your thoughts and your actions are the best clue to start to think, oh, okay, if I'm thinking this and I'm acting like this, what core belief am I operating on? And I really believe as well, it's ironic that I'm saying believe here in what I'm about to say, but I really believe that the beliefs that you hold are a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're doing a launch and you think it's going to do really well, it probably will do because of the energy that you put in it, how much effort you put into it, the energy that you feel like. If you're doing a launch and you don't think it's going to go well, probably won't, because of the exact same thing. I've seen a lot of evidence for this, and I really believe that beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies, which is ironic because maybe it's just because I believe that it's true for me, because that again is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I believe it. I've seen evidence for this. So being aware of your beliefs, and again, just like everything else we talked about here, being aware of them, seeing where they may come from, and realizing that you don't have to believe it is very, very empowering. Number 2, I believe one of the most beneficial things you can do for your money mindset and your identity is whenever you get the chance, try and step into and experience your ideal reality. So I'm a big believer that what you believe and the identity that you are and the energy that you vibrate at, which I think kind of all goes hand in hand, brings in your reality somehow, some magical way. I believe that the identity that you are, like the person that you are actually being, brings in your reality. So if you're acting like someone that makes 50k months and you truly are being the person who makes 50k months, I believe it's only a matter of time before that reality comes to you, or you find yourself at that reality. So I don't believe it's you have it and then you do it and then you be the person. I believe it is be, do, have. You be the person, that naturally makes you do the things, and then you have the thing that you want. One of the most beneficial ways that I think there is to actually upgrade your identity is to allow yourself to experience pieces of the reality that you're trying to make the norm. You know, what I mean by this is, let's say you're going away somewhere. In your vision that you're trying to make a reality, you stay at really, really nice hotels with glass windows all the way along the wall and all that kind of stuff, right? And when you're looking around at hotels, there's one that might be a little bit out of what you're used to paying, or maybe quite a bit out of what you're used to spending on yourself, but it just looks like the exact thing that you will be doing when you're at, like, let's say 20k months. I think it can be a very, very good move, as long as it doesn't fucking make you hungry because you haven't got enough money, to go and treat yourself to that. Go there, treat yourself to that experience that reality, because you can start to get a feel for what it feels like to vibrate at that level, to be that identity, right? The more that you can kind of get tastes of this stuff, spending time around the people that in money terms make as much money as you would like to, being in more expensive places and stuff, can really start to bring your identity up, and you can even start to see how people at that amount of money and stuff actually act, and you can start to feel that. And I really believe this is useful for shifting your identity and eventually your reality. Number 3, get around people who are making more than you and playing a bigger game than you. This is 80% of the reason that I came to Bali and paid $3,000, sorry, for that 1 day event, just to get around people playing a much bigger game than me. Not only is it just inspiring, but honestly, it can just blow your beliefs out of the water. I remember when I was a fitness coach, an online fitness coach, and this was before I was hitting 10K months, and I joined this mastermind where people were doing 10, 12, 15, some even 20 or 50K months, like the rare few. Before that point, I think I was making like 6K months and literally feeling on top of the world. I joined here. It just completely opened my eyes to what was possible, completely. I saw all of these people making so much more than me and making it quickly, and charging more than me, and how they were operating. From that point, it took me, I think, about 3 months to hit my first 10K month, because it just blew my belief out of the water. So trying to get around people that are operating on a bigger level than you in similar games is huge, or even if they're not in similar games. It can blow your beliefs out of the water, and sometimes it can even just make you aware of beliefs that you didn't even realize you had before. Your money beliefs will seep into your business, and it's not only the obvious things, right? You will have stories and beliefs around money that is probably not 100% true, and it will be affecting how you operate within your business, whether positively or negatively. So when I look back at my experience, number one, it completely held me back in terms of what I was pricing my services at. I was undercharging for way too long. Some people might even argue that I'm still undercharging now, but definitely not by as much, because of the story that I had put on money. The immense value that I put on even the tiniest amount of money, it forced me to undercharge because of my unwillingness to let go and be loose with money and to spend it. Because of how much I was in pain when I spent money, I thought that must be the same for everyone else. So I kept my prices low. Second of all, in investing in yourself. After I initially did it, it's always been the one that I kind of did heavily. I think it's because I always knew that it would kind of pay me back. But still, when you're putting these stories on money, you will hold yourself back from actually investing in things that will make you more money. This is the one that you might not even think about, but a poor money mindset in business can really ruin your boundaries that you have within business. Because I was charging little, I felt like I owed them everything because of the story that I put around money and my beliefs around money. Just because they were paying me anything, I felt like I owed my clients everything. So there was a point where I had like 70 clients. I was barely making money compared to having 70 clients because I was charging so little, and I was giving them so much of my time and energy that I basically didn't have any other life, and I finished completely burnt out because of it. I wasn't charging much, and I had no boundaries because I felt like I was just a slave to them because they'd pay me anything, which is not the case. Fifth lesson, having a vision for your money that you're trying to make, I have found is really, really, really important. And I only found this out recently, actually, or only like really started to understand this, because I've always been big on vision, right? But if you're just trying to make money because of the money itself, you're just wanting to see your bank balance go up and nothing else, you'll probably stall. I'd got 12.5K mums pretty easily this time around. At that point, I felt comfortable because my vision hadn't expanded to anything larger than that. And I could feel myself slow down. I could feel myself not necessarily get complacent, but stop pushing for more so much. I could feel that. I went and got a cigar, sat in a fancy cigar lounge, and I sat down and I wrote exactly what my life would look like when I was making 25K mums. I started to really envision, what is the possibilities? And this was really important for me, by the way, and it might help you too. It wasn't just about what I was able to now buy and experience. It was also the people around me. How will this money help my loved ones and give other people a more comfortable life too, right? That was huge for me. I started to create this vision, and I got so excited when I was sitting there writing it. I genuinely doubled my business from there to hitting 25K months. So I started to hit that vision in about 4 months' time. It was all there. I just needed the vision to step into and go into. I also think that money needs to flow, right? When you start to hold onto it so tightly, I don't know how, but on an energetic level, when you're holding something so tightly, it's hard to have more. Whereas when you let it flow and you're looser with it, energetically you create space for it. That was a little bonus one for you. And the final one, maybe the most important, is money is just a resource. It's such an emotional subject. We put so much meaning on money ourselves, or stories on money ourselves. We pick up so much, but understand at the end of the day, it's just a resource. Just like time, just like energy, money is a resource too. Which means if you can spend money to save time or energy, and currently that's more valuable to you, it's a good trade, because it is all just resources. So with that, be aware of the stories that you're deciding to believe around money. Be aware of the meaning that you are placing on money, and understand that it's just a resource. And it's a resource that if you use correctly, it can really push you forwards. This one might sting for a few people, but also understand that like money's a resource. If you're broke right now, or you're not happy with where your income is, maintaining the same mindset and behavior and identity around money as the same mindset, identity, and behavior that has got you here is probably going to keep you here. And if you're not happy with that, you're going to have to step into some resistance to change it, just like I did. All of the people that I know that are making good money. The first big relative to where I was, the first big investment I made into myself was £750 up front for 10 weeks. I was umming and ahhing about this for a week. I was calling my dad, asking him, do you think I should do this? I was so uncertain if I should do this or not. You know, I look back now and this flight alone was probably triple that. But back then this was huge to me. And I could have continued with my same money patterns and not invested in myself. And I'm genuinely scared to like know what the outcome would have been. But I did it, right? I invested in myself, £750, which was a lot for me back then. About 7 months later, things had gone so well that my next investment into myself was £15,000 up front. So I went from umming and ahhing about £750 to umming and ahhing a little bit more, about £15,000. And since then, you know, things have continued to grow. And it's because I was able to shift the way that I was operating around money and use it as a resource to move me forwards. That is the video, guys. I hope you could hear me okay. I know that you can hear the humming of the plane, but I wanted to record this on the plane to just make this like a real genuine share and transmission of hopefully wisdom and value from me to you while I'm still in the journey, while I'm still experiencing this too. Not saying I've completed anything here, but I'm gone through part of the journey, and I really, really hope this helps you too. Cool. I'd love to hear in the comments if it did. See you later.